I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Adequate notice of this meeting was advertised in the Asbury Park Press and the Beacon on Thursday, April 15, 2021, and by posting a notice in the Forked River Post Office and the Lenoka Harbor Post Office, and by filing a copy of the notice with the Lacey Township Clerk as required by the Open Public Meeting Act. Mr. DeGeorge, could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Claus.
Here.
Mr. Scanlon.
Here.
Mr. Peters.
Present.
Mrs. DeSenza.
Present.
Mrs. Downing.
Here.
Mr. Polino. Mrs. McAvoy.
I'm here, thank you. At this point, Dr. Clark, do you have a superintendent report?
Not a report, but just want to welcome everybody to our second budget workshop. You've all received a copy of the advertised budget that is not advertised. And Mr. DeGeorge, I believe we're going to do a Q&A.
That's correct.
Okay. At this point, we will have public comment, if there will be any. An audience member wishing to make a comment shall raise his or her hand, and when called upon, state their name, address, or affiliation, and intention to make a statement. Comments shall be limited to the agenda items only, and comments would be limited to the budget only at this meeting. Comments shall be addressed to the board president. Comments shall be made on one issue at a time. Comments shall be limited to 5 minutes. No audience member will be recognized twice until all who wish to comment have been recognized. And this is question and answer, so during your comments, if you have any questions, Mr. DeGeorge would be happy to answer them. So would anybody in the public like to comment or question? Or do you need more time? Need more time.
If I may, Madam Chairman, I'd just like to say again that this isn't just an opportunity for the public, but also for the board members who are not, and we should be operating on a much more informal basis.
Mr. Scanlon, I'm doing what I was
I
told.
understand you have board comments on there, but what I meant is that if a board member has a question or has a comment or has concern about the budget, it may lead to a question or comment from the public also. I think there should be allowance for give and take if necessary. That is what my intent was when I had brought this up, to make a more informal setting. But we'll see.
We'll see, right. When I discussed the agenda with Mr. DeGeorge, we discussed
yeah,
that
no, you
board
have to put
would make
something
their
on paper,
comments
right,
at
yeah,
board comment.
Okay, right.
While you all are reading the budget, Mrs. Claus, do you have any comments, questions, suggestions, anything for Mr. DeGeorge?
The only thing, I don't know if I should wait for public for my
Well,
comment.
we
or-
could, you know what, let's switch board comments with public
Okay.
comment, so they can all have time. So
Okay,
we'll go
so-
around and,
Okay, the only thing I could say is, I'm hoping if we could just make some time in the near future, maybe next week or the week after, just to really look into if there's anything we could do to help generate income. I know we've been kind of talking about a couple different avenues, but really just to sit down and see what's feasible, what we can do, what we're all interested in supporting. I'd just like to throw a couple ideas out there and see how we can start producing revenue and, go from there. Because after this is approved, we're going to be starting all over again, so.
correct. So, Mrs. Claus, what do you think if we picked a day in May, hopefully, if we have a free day, and we could have a public meeting and invite the public and have it open with suggestions for revenue?
We could do that. I mean, I don't know if I should just run it by, Dr. Clark and Pat
Yeah.
first, just to see if it's something we could do before we even bring it out there. But it's not something I haven't mentioned before.
Right.
You
No,
know.
I think a public meeting would be great because
If we keep it small like this, I think it's
Yes,
a great idea.
I think that'd be great, and then I'm sure the public has some good ideas, and maybe other board members, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll look at a date tomorrow, and
Okay.
then we'll invite the public, and that's a great
We can do
idea.
it just like this, yeah.
Yes.
And I have like 4 things that I
Yeah.
think might work, and,
That sounds
but I just think we
wonderful.
need to start moving on it before it's too late.
That sounds
right,
wonderful.
good.
So
All
we'll-
right.
we'll pick a date, we'll invite the public, and we'll tell them to please come with their suggestions.
Yeah, that's.
Okay,
yeah.
all right, that's great. Mrs. DeSenza, do you have anything?
Not at this time.
Mr. Decker, how about you?
Not at this time.
Okay. Mr. Peters,
I have a list.
wonderful.
Did you guys hear me okay? All right. We lost $1.3 million of our budget. And my question to Mr. DeGeorge is, can we present a balanced budget for next year without eliminating programs and staff?
So, Mr. Peters, we have a balanced budget, and we were able to avoid reducing programs and staff. And then we've used the term sharpen your pencil a lot. And so, as always, not that we never do, but we used a pencil so sharp that it made budget meetings with budget managers very, very tense, and it should be, because that's the right thing to do. In addition to that, though, we projected a lower cost of benefits. We talked about that, based largely in part on a reduction in premiums in the state educators' health benefits plan. For 2 years in a row, unprecedented reduction in premiums. Also, the addition of a new plan, which is a lower premium even than the state plan. The concern remains, though, that in regards to benefits, the contribution under the new law is lower from the employees than current law. So it's, although benefits are lower, which helps us, it's still going to be something we have to keep our eyes on. We spoke last night about the direct install program. We've had that now for a couple of years, and for anybody who didn't see last night's meeting, it is a program through the clean energy folks at the state level where certain size school buildings and districts are eligible for a reduced cost HVAC, lighting, refrigeration projects. We did projects like that in the last couple of years at Fork of the River, Lenoka Harbor, and Mill Pond. And last night, we approved work the same way at Cedar Creek. And as Mr. Scanlon said, the return on investment is very low, very quick, and the energy savings outweighs the amount of money that we're able to, we have to pay back. Now, 80% of the project is paid for by the program, 20% is paid for by us, and financed at 0% over a 3-year period. So it's a great program, and it enabled us, the bottom line, that in conjunction with projected lower market issues in natural gas and electricity caused us to really reduce the amount we budgeted for natural gas and electric. In addition, we did some things where we classified an additional $75,000 of salaries out of the general budget and into the grants budget. We increased the amount of out-of-district tuition that we charge to the IDEA grant. So we took more out of the operating budget and we put it into the grant by $50,000, $40,000. We reduced the budget for overtime and extra time. We decreased extra comp for drivers by about $25,000. We decreased contracted transportation services by $50,000, and we bought down the budget for next year by doing things this year that we wanted to do next year but couldn't find room to fit in. 2 examples. We prepaid some of our lease payments on some of our buses that we were due to make in August that would have been in next year's budget, but because of availability this year, we're able to prepay, put it in this year's budget, and take it out of next year's budget. In addition, payments that were made to retirees for their unused sick time and their unused vacation time, we're able to take about almost $200,000 or so out of next year's payment and put it into pay it in this current year. So the combination of all those things really added up and allowed us to put together a balanced budget without eliminating programs and staff, which is the goal.
Thank you. On that staff salary you just talked about, I'd like to segue into, I believe we're in the upper 30s for benefits for employees per benefit. How much, what do we pay a year for benefits?
Right, so if, assuming a family level benefits, medical, prescription, and dental, you're looking at $38,000 or so.
It just, I know we're in the state benefit plan, but is there any possible way that we can shop with the amount of employees that we have, with the amount of money that we spend? Can we entertain somebody else in here with the benefits and still get just good benefits for a cheaper price?
Sure. The short answer is yes. We work with our benefits broker to shop us around to other plans.
So we have an actual broker that we use?
Absolutely, yes. And we just purchased our claims experience, just got it free, really, from the state plan, and the broker's using that right now to shop around. So there's always activity in the benefits arena as well as in the property and casualty workers' comp arena to try to get the best coverage for everybody in accordance with the contracts and the laws at the lowest possible price. So absolutely, it's being worked on as we speak. The experience has been unfavorable, which makes the district at this point, or up to this point, unattractive to other benefits providers, but we keep trying because that's what we do.
Skip, can I ask a question on your question?
Sure.
Can we shop for another broker, or do we have to use the same one we're using? Because sometimes different brokers might be able to offer something different.
Sure.
Have we tried that in the past, or?
We have a couple years ago gone out, but the honest truth, it's not the broker. It's us.
Yeah,
Yep, it's us. It's that we're not, doesn't matter who the broker is. We have a great one, and they work very well, and they do an awesome job. They've been here a long time, and it's not them.
I'm not saying it is.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
I'm just
wondering
saying,
if like a different broker
I
would
mean, I
offer
get it.
something
A fresh
different.
set of eyes, perhaps, but it's
Yeah,
not going to change what they're looking at.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Will there be any changes in the budget between now and the May 6th public hearing?
Yes, there will be. So we, as I said we would, when we approved the tentative budget, we have been looking at the $80+ million budget, line by line, trying to find extra things. So in all of that, about $53,000 or so kind of became available to us because, mostly because we had a rebate on workers' comp insurance this year, which we're able to apply to next year. So we're able to, post-budget, reduce that amount. After talking to everybody, though, I mean, remember, $53,000, every dollar counts, but on $80 million, it's fractioned, so it's not like it's going to be life-changing for us. But we've been talking, and we believe that we're going to try to apply that toward the child study team, because that's where we think we need it the most. And in case anybody's wondering, yes, we did take a look at what this would do to the tax rate if we said, well, maybe we want to reduce taxes a little bit for the 53. It makes 1/1000th of a difference on the rate, and it's $2 a year less on the average home. So In my professional opinion, the child study team really is hurting, so taking that money and putting it where it can help kids is a better thing.
On that, we have approximately 40, 45 days of school left. I believe, when's our last day, the
18th.
18th? 40-something days of school left. Has all the teachers announced who's retiring? Because right now, if we have a teacher that's making 75, 80 a year, if they're retiring and we hire a new teacher to replace them, starting out at salary at, 40 or whatever our starting salary is.
Right. I mean, as a teacher, you know you could retire up to the last day.
Right.
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 I know the
But
letter.
have we given a
yeah.
notice out to the
Yes.
teachers saying, hey, is anybody looking in retiring so we can work on our budget where we're at
You
next
really
year?
can't, that's not the right thing to do. We're not permitted to really do that.
But didn't you ask and say, if you could tell me, but it wasn't required?
Sure, so
Yeah.
our contracts, let me try to answer the questions this way. As of right now, we're aware of every retiree that has submitted plans to retire by July 1 or by December 31st. And to the extent possible, we've already worked in the reduction and the replacement into the budget as it stands.
Gotcha.
I don't know of any others. I am not permitted to ask them to do that. However, I know that Mr. Ryan does a great job of trying to help his folks make good decisions for themselves. So, but anybody we've been aware of, and there's language in the contract with the teachers, which basically says, if they notify the district by a certain date, January 15th, then we will be able to incorporate the impact in the budget. But bear in mind, we just spoke about terminal leave, so let's say a higher salary teacher retires. If that person's been here a while, we owe them money which we have to budget for. So more often than not, the breakage that comes to the district is very, very small.
That money's for sick days, accumulated sick days, correct?
Yes, sir, yep. So it's very small. But to answer your question, we know of everybody we're aware of. That's,
And is that a one-time payout when they leave?
it depends, if it's over a certain amount, we can pay them up to 3 years at our
Oh.
discretion. So we have a whole schedule of terminal leave payments that we're scheduled to make. And it's from that schedule that I sat down with the benefits folks and decided that we could take X number of dollars out of next year's payments that we owed folks. And we asked if they would be okay with receiving the payment this year instead of next school year. And they were all fine with that. We're not just going to give it to them, we had to ask them first.
What's the recent history of how much a school district has increased property taxes? And where are we at this year?
Okay, so we are at 2.6% on the general fund and a slight reduction because debt service portion of the levy decreased us a little below 2.4. But if you look back, and I started to keep records going back to 2010, I think, and in my opinion, the district has been pretty responsible. There's almost every year, the board raised taxes no more than cap or even below cap in some cases. So this board continues to take seriously, in my opinion, its fiscal responsibility to taxpayers, being taxpayers, yourselves, but also balancing that very nicely, I think, and very respectfully with the board's obligation to provide a thorough and efficient education. So where we could be, and the reason we did it, and I know you know this, is because we lost all that state aid that you mentioned before. There was really no other option for us.
As far as grants, what is and where are we at with Fund 20?
Okay. So a school district, if you remember back to the September October workshops, presentations that we had, we outlined the types of funds, F-U-N-D-S, that exist in the New Jersey Public School. The biggest one by far is the Fund 10, or the general fund, or the operating budget. For us, that's 93+% of our total budget, right? So it's where most everything happens. Fund 20 is the fund where we're supposed to account for all of our federal, state, and local grants, as well as student funds, like student activity accounts, co-curricular, things like that. The important distinction, and then there's Fund 40, which is what we pay debt service out of. But the important distinction between Fund 10, the giant fund, and Fund 20 is that the revenue in Fund 10 comes from property taxes, for the most part, and state aid, right? Revenue, 100% of revenue from the Fund 20 or grants budget is restricted and comes from outside the district. For instance, NCLB is a federal pass-through, IDEA is a federal pass-through, student activity funds, co-curricular, they raise their money, they deposit it in the account for a specific purpose, and they withdraw the funds out of that same account for that specific purpose that they raised the funds for. We have $3+ million worth of grants in the budget. It's something we were just talking about before the meeting began, how restricted it is and restrictive the rules are governing the use of those funds. All important, but none of it comes from local taxpayers.
Let's talk about some capital projects. Which capital projects are we undertaking next year? I know we talked about Mill Pond Furnace? No, we just did Mill Pond Furnace.
Okay, so let me try to answer that this way. Specific to next year, 2 projects. One would be the replacement of our aging fire alarm systems in all of our buildings. In this specific building, because it's, got an addition at a different time, there's a different brand, type, age of fire alarm systems. The board, specific to the Finance and Operations Committee, does a great job, I think, of identifying and queuing up or scheduling capital projects which are all related to the health and safety of students and staff. None of it is frivolous, none of it is beyond any scope of other than health and safety. So replacement of the burglar alarm systems in all of our buildings is one project. The other one is the upgrade of our access control, which is the new fancy term for burglar alarm systems. We did a survey with the architect, and they're all over the place. And so we're going to go through and upgrade where we need to upgrade. Again, health and safety related. So where do these projects come from? Every district's required to have what's called the long-range facilities plan, which is a schedule over a 5-year forward-looking period of health and safety related capital projects that the district really needs to undertake. So we spoke about fire alarms and access control. Back to your question about boilers. Boilers is a health and safety project like no other. And I said this the first time we tried to replace boilers here in my time. If you've never seen a boiler explode in a public school, YouTube that, and you'll see why it's extremely important for us to replace boilers when they're needed to be replaced. The next boilers in queue would be over at Cedar Creek School. So that is one of our projects that's on our long-range facilities plan. As of right now, after we do all that, I think we're going to be in very good shape with boilers for a while. I think so.
So if we're going to be in good shape with the boilers, every school is pretty much, or who has our oldest? Do we have the records of actually That seems to be the boilers, roofing, I guess would be our biggest expense. Where are we at as far as schedule-wise? Do we have like 10 years before replacement of the building school? Do we have 15 years? What's the
Right.
capacity of those boilers? I saw the new one in Mill Pond, I believe,
Yep.
when I first got on the board. We
And
did a
then one
walkthrough.
here, we just finished.
And then the brand new one here.
Yep.
So where are we at with Forked River?
That's new.
Forked River's new?
Forked River, it was done not too long before
Lonoco Harbor?
I got here. That was the first project we did
Okay.
when I got here. Lenoka Harbor, then we did the Mill Pond School, and then we did here at the high school.
So all we have left is Cedar Creek.
Pretty much, yes. But again, if it was, oh my God, there's a extreme danger of something happening, we would have addressed that sooner. We got to triage these projects in the order that they are most immediately important, right? But to answer your question about roofing, all of our roofs are out of warranty, which is, they're just old, right? So at some point, I would say probably within the next 2 to 3 years, we have to consider a roofing project. However, we have other health and safety related projects still. We have about, I would say, $9 million or so of projects to look at the Finance and Operations Committee level once we get done with burglar alarms and fire alarms.
Well, just a big side, when you said roofing projects, I wanted to talk about this. Years ago, prior to me coming on the board, that's all I remember was, people discussing these solar panels and how much we spent and this and that and all in yards, but from what I understand, these solar panels have been producing extremely well. And you've been asking us about these SREC credits,
Yes.
time to sell, and we've been doing well with that. The concern I have is now, how old are the solar panels? Regina, you were on when they were installed.
I think there's 8 left, 8 years left. to
8
the
years
useful
left?
life. 2029,
Well,
but
They
that's
are.
the projected useful life. They
Right.
could go further.
Can we
Right.
make it to then possibly, rather than pay the labor? Because in order to change out the roofs, we have to remove all the solar panels.
we sure do.
So if it's possible, I'm just thinking the best aspect of it, if it's possible, leave those solar panels on there. They're producing more than we anticipated, correct? Still to this day, they're
Absolutely.
outperforming.
Yes.
So let's leave those solar panels on and leave those roofs up there until possibly, and then possibly replace with a new efficient, ones that are better efficient when we do the roofs. Rather than saying in 2 years,
Mhm.
if the panels are good to 2029, in 2 years, rather pay the labor to remove all the solar panels, put the roof back on, then put the old solar panels back on again. It makes sense to me if we can drag it out and do our own repairs ourselves in-house, wait for those solar panels are totally exhausted out of their use, then do the roofs, then do the panels.
Certainly the preferred way to do it. I mean, you think about it in terms of if you had solar panels on your house,
Right.
the way I do. Oh my God, the first thing you think of is, oh, how are we going to put it on? How old is my roof? How long do I have? What's involved? All excellent questions. And I would say yes, the preferred way to do it is to do everything at one time. A lot pricier than roofs, but at the same time, I haven't come to the board with a proposal for roofing because we're just trying to maintain. Nothing's unsafe, it's just out of warranty like anything else that we buy, right? But the roofs are in good shape. It's not that they're in bad shape, but we're repairing where we can until we get to a point where we can make that decision.
Well, thank you for answering all the questions. I know I had a bunch of them, and I want to apologize for having so many of them, but on my platform, when I ran for school board, it was students first and taxpayers second. So,
No, I appreciate it. No question's a bad question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Downing?
Okay, I just have some simple, good questions. Bottom line, Steve, Vanessa, any student programs taken away in this budget? Any added?
Any added? Well, I mean, we've,
There was no cuts to programs and instruction and learning for kids.
And in materials, we're good?
Yeah.
Instructional materials,
Yeah.
And Mrs. Downing, lead was added.
lead, okay.
And we actually were, and maybe Mr. DeGeorge can elaborate a little bit, we were a little lucky that we had some monies this year that we were able to expand upon our curriculum, and we didn't have to put it into next year's budget. So that was a cost savings for next year as well.
And by programs, not just academic programs, are our clubs, sports still intact, or we're not cutting any of those? Because I think now, in this day and time, our kids need all that kind
And
of stuff right
especially
now.
in September.
Yeah.
And
In fact,
Mrs. Downey?
I'm sorry, if you recall, and I'm not sure exactly how long ago, but we did add some of our clubs back.
That's what I was just going to say.
Oh, right,
Yes,
right, sorry.
Same thing,
Yeah.
yes.
I just
The
wanna
one
make
at
sure
Mill
they were
Pond
still
that
there.
was necessary,
Right.
we added that one, remember? And
Yes,
then each
yep.
elementary school also added
Yeah.
one.
I just want to make sure that none have been taken away, because I really believe they need it
Absolutely.
for our mental health,
Mhm.
for their mental health.
Yeah, good point.
Also, very important, and I want to make sure, child study, are we hiring a new person for our team to
Right.
help with the amount of
Right,
caseloads?
the plan, the money we spoke about, us continuing to whittle down the budget, the 53 or $4,000 or so we spoke about, is going to go toward that. That's the plan, right? We do need more, so we're going to try to look at, we're having additional staffing meetings. I think tomorrow, we're having a meeting about staffing at senior admin, and we're going to talk about possible movements of folks. No elimination, but taking advantage of some efficiencies we were going to try to create to come up with the other component to that.
Okay.
Yes.
That was my next question. How many right now today, at 20 of 7, retirements do we have?
Ms. Downing, I don't know the number
No?
exactly. It's not a record number, I would say. It's probably average, but I just don't know. I can get it to you, though.
Okay. All right, that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And Mrs. Downing, I think at Finance, we talked about it would be a school psychologist. I think Mr. Bond asked for a psychologist
Good.
to help with the
Yeah,
evaluations.
because the caseloads, as we talked about in our meeting.
Yes.
Our-
So I
our-
think the
And that would
Finance
help.
Committee thought that was great to add that in.
Good
Okay.
job, Finance.
All right. So my only question, Mr. DeGeorge, is advertised per pupil cost calculations, the total budgetary comparative per pupil cost. So for next year, we're proposed at 16,558. How does that compare with the other schools in Ocean County?
In the county, I'm not going to say because the Department of Education breaks school districts up into categories such as K to 12, K to 6, K to 4, whatever those types, 7 to 12 type districts, 9 to 12 districts. We're K to 12, so in the K to 12 class of our size and type, I'll tell you right, for total administrative cost, total cost per pupil, we are well below the average, almost a little bit, just
Okay, great. So right under that is total classroom instruction. Would that be all the materials for curriculum? Or would that be manipulatives? Would that be everything? Everything per 10,528? So,
right. So you've got to look at that one and the 3 below it, I think, because if you add the other 3, it comes up to 10,528. So total classroom instruction includes the sum of salaries and benefits, supplies and textbooks, and purchase services, just related services. So the total classroom instruction cost is budgeted to be 10,528, and it breaks down accordingly, with the vast majority being salaries and benefits. Does that help?
yes, okay, thank you. And my only other question is, above that advertised, so it says adult education programs. So, Kim, that's a way maybe we could bring revenue in that we used to have. So I think we talked about in curriculum the other night. So that's something to look at, to bring back adult education programs, because right now it's 0. So that's possible, bringing revenue in. Okay.
Absolutely, everything's possible.
Yep. Mr. DeGeorge, I just want to thank you for all your hard work with balancing the budget and answering everyone's questions and working so hard on this. Thank you.
I appreciate.
No,
you
I
say-
know.
I
yeah,
appreciate you saying that,
Yeah.
but the credit really goes to a wide host of people, not the least of which is this board, who's been continually receptive to new ideas and better ways to do things, and an open-mindedness, but student-centered. So I appreciate that, but really the credit goes to this board.
On a
Thank
lighter
you.
note, I'd like to add a quick,
I'm going to go to Mr.
oh,
Scanlon.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, we worked on the budget, so I really don't have a lot
Yes.
of questions. I wanted to hear everyone's input. I wanted to hear what other people had to say, especially other board members. And if the public has any comments, I wanted to hear that, because we're part of the budget committee. So
Yes. Okay, thank you.
that was my purpose.
Perfect. Mr. Peters, another one?
On a lighter note, if we do the adult education and open that up to bring revenue in, can we please get a computer class to teach seniors and how to use their cell phone? My father calls me 3 times a day.
Yeah.
How do I change the channel? How do I put Netflix on? How do I use my cell phone? These young kids are phenomenal with it. Let's have the kids teach that class, how to use electronics. You can take
put
it too,
Netflix
Ed.
on the phone?
What?
It's great.
Meeting adjourned, meeting adjourned.
Like it?
Okay.
I have
and-
one more question.
Okay, Ms.
It's
Claus.
I'm actually piggybacking off what Linda said about the extracurricular activities. I think next year, we're going to see an influx of students that want to come out and participate in either sports or extracurricular. So I do think we need to prepare for staffing for that. I know we're always cutting, but, I think we do need to provide that to the students, and they're going to be ready to come out. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind when we look at the stipends and, what we can cut and what we can save. But I think it's going to be record numbers next year. I think everybody's ready to go back to normal, and they're going to want to try new things.
Yeah, we're going to encourage it too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
another thing, so when I was campaigning, a 6th grader answered the door and had me for about 30 minutes. He did, he had a lot to say. He wanted to have more to do for the 6th graders for athletics. He said he wasn't a lacrosse kid, wasn't a football kid, but it seems that it's kind of lacking in that grade. Maybe 5th and 6th, I'm not really sure what we even offer for them. But he wants to participate and just didn't really have an outlet to do so. So if we can take a look at that. But then again, I don't know if that would be adding a stipend or if we can combine it with something. But they do want to participate. I just don't know if we can offer something else. And then, so let's just say it does come down to a discussion of what we are going to eliminate. Where does that come out? Like, who is told, and does it just go through finance, or is that something that's an open discussion?
You mean
For
during
this
the
year?
budget build?
Right, so let's just say, they want to, we need to cut a stipend, and, that's up to whoever's in charge to say, well, let's do it with athletics, or let's do it with extracurricular, or whatever. How does that come into a discussion instead of a decision? Like, is there a discussion first, and then, is it
Well,
for all board members, or is it just a certain select group?
So let me give you an example. A while back, we had a discussion about having to make very difficult cuts with co-curricular and activities, and we pulled the entire list together, and then we sat with the principals, and we said, well, we have to make some difficult decisions. And we had those conversations, and we decided, well, we can reduce this based on numbers. The numbers just weren't there. And when I say numbers, I mean
Right.
student participation. And then we presented that to the board.
Each committee. She
Right.
went to each committee and presented it.
Okay.
And then we had a discussion about, what would be, what are the pros, what are the cons, what can we live without right now? And that's not to say it's forever. But that's just one example of how we go about it. And there's a variety of different ways, depending on what
Okay.
the topic is or what it is that
So
we're
we'll all be
looking at.
informed, is what was my
Oh,
question.
yeah, we try to cover, I mean, we cover it first in finance. and-
Yeah.
And.
So last year, at this point, it was in January or February that they came to every committee with the cuts from the co-curricular. So she presented it to every committee for discussion.
Okay. So with the fishing club, was that just a misstep, or do we know what
Yeah,
happened there?
so that came up at our board
Yeah,
meeting last night, if you
night.
recall, and we did check into that.
Okay,
And, one of the things that we forgot, because it's been a year,
Yeah.
is that we eliminated field trips. Not all of them, but
Okay.
most of them. And fishing club is a field trip.
okay.
Now, as the numbers, the COVID cases are starting to improve,
Right,
we are, to the extent possible, letting up on some of the restrictions that we can. So for example, I spoke with Mr. Brandis today, and our fishing club students are participating at the tournament on May 23rd at Island Beach State Park. As a matter of fact, Mr. Decker just signed off on that
Nice.
today. So I actually happened to speak to that parent today, and I explained that to her. And, one of the other trips, and I don't know if you saw that, came across, it was related to the fishing club, but on a boat. And we denied that because that's less control that we
Right.
have. We don't know who else is coming
Yeah,
onto that
totally
boat.
understandable.
Boats tend to be a little bit more crowded.
Right.
Those of you that have boats know that, I don't. So we said yes to the tournament, but not to that,
Okay.
that boat trip. So, yeah, great question. And
Yeah.
I had a very good dialogue with that
I
parent.
just want to
that
keep the
asked.
kids involved off the streets,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look,
That's
we're
our
all
goal.
longing to get back to
Yeah.
normal, truly.
But I do feel like this coming year, if we're allowed to go fully back, I
Yeah.
think there's just going to be an influx with every activity.
Yeah.
So I
So-
just want to make sure we're prepared.
Can I just say one thing about that? So, along the lines of out-of-the-box ideas, right, or connecting dots, which some people may not see connectable, the grant budget we spoke about, right? We know we had, we call it ESSER money, which really is COVID money, which, again, it's restricted to expenditures related to COVID and the impact of COVID. One of the best examples of that is in the second round of ESSER money, there was specific for educational recovery for kids who might not have had an impact negatively in education. So Dr. Clark, Mr. Decker are putting together a summer school program, right? Again, I'm the business guy, so
Right.
I don't,
You just give us the money.
I give you the money.
Yeah.
But there's also available to use that money for social, emotional impact from COVID. So it's not too far afield in a restrictive
Okay.
environment where we might be able to, on a temporary basis, as long as grant funds work, or made available, to try to use some of that maybe, right,
Right.
to create environments for kids to come back and be a
Participate.
part of.
Yeah.
I think that's great, because we can't do it
Yeah,
as we sit here at whatever
Yeah.
time it is in the regular budget, right?
that's
So I
good.
think
Because
that's-
mental health is an issue for the kids, and
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
isolation going on, and,
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
we need to get them back and socialized, and.
No question.
Okay,
Well,
question.
everything you read now, any educational magazine
Yeah.
or journal, they're talking about that same point. that,
Yeah.
They need to
Yeah.
get involved, not just that they want to.
Right.
They need to.
I agree.
And the new committee that, the
Yeah.
Social Emotional Mental Health Committee is, they're talking
making
about how to get the kids more involved,
Yeah.
about clubs and
Yeah. So important.
education, and just a lot to do with mental health and social emotional. All right,
Thank you.
anyone in the public? Is there any questions, comments, suggestions? Yes, you can just sit right there and speak up if you want.
Came up at the town meeting, you guys brought it up last night about marijuana.
Yes.
Now, we talked about federal funds. Supposedly, there is a thing in place that if you sell marijuana in the state, you can lose your federal funds. What effect would that have on the budget if that happened here?
Oh, good question.
Right, I don't know. I don't know. So, I mean,
No idea.
I don't know, what we understand is that it seems like the town committee will probably vote no. That's what we're hearing right now for retail sales. So we don't know what the effect would be. It's a good question.
And you're saying, sir, just to clarify your question, that if the town voted yes to sell marijuana sales?
Not even the town, everybody in the state. If the state okays to do it, it's one of the things that we give up. At the town meeting, the police can lose their federal grants, the town will lose the money they're losing there as far as stuff like that. If the federal government says you shouldn't be selling marijuana in your state, they can take away your federal grants.
Well, that sounds more like a state issue more than a township
I-
or county issue.
I think from what I've read, although the federal government can do that, they have not done it. And, because there are other states that already did legalize marijuana. But I read something in the Times, and I'm not going to try and quote it, but my takeaway from the article was that it would be within the federal government's right to withhold the federal funds, but they haven't done it. They've sort of just ignored that, rather than punish the entire state. Also, the federal government is now considering legalizing, allowing states to make it legal, and of course, you know that reason, that's so that the banks can be used and they can track the funds. Because right now, you can't use the banks. So anyway, but I don't think that we have to, I'm not sure we're in jeopardy from losing federal funds because of what the state did. That would be the best I've found out. But it is a good question. They have the potential to do that.
Yes, thank you. Is there anyone else? No. Okay. All right, we'll have another public meeting on the 26th, same place, 6 PM. If you want to go home and read this and bring your questions, we'd be glad to have you. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And Mr. DeGeorge, can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.